Hello and welcome to Arise News. You're watching a special broadcast brought to you by Arise TV and global consultants KPMG. It is Budget Day. It sounds just as dramatic as the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Judgment Day. We are live from the Insight Center in KPMG Towers in Lagos, Nigeria, and we are going to be talking about diving deep into the 2023 budget signed by the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. We've got a whole bunch of analysts, economists, executives joining us to answer a number of questions. What does the budget mean to you as an individual? What does it mean to businesses? What does it mean to the macro economy? You have questions, we have answers. We have representatives from the federal government. We've got the best and brightest from KPMG. We've got a renowned economist joining us to have an in-depth conversation. And we're also joined by my awesome colleague, Rolake Akinkube-Filani. Dr. Debt Teriba, economist, CEO, I thank you for joining us. Please, I want to get your context for Nigeria within the global matters as far as what you see us in terms of the budget.
Right, yes. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be a part of the conversation. And I would like to, commend the organizers for the thoughtfulness. And I would also like to...
Yes, carry on. Yes, carry on.
I'd like to acknowledge, the DG Budget Office of
course.
Federation.
Yes.
And the team to which it belongs, the entire team in the Ministry of Finance. We've seen 8 years of increased disclosure of fiscal details. I'm not sure there had been any other time in the past that we had been this informed, about what's happening to the budget.
Yeah.
And they not only provide granular details, they also make themselves available, as we interrogate this.
Right.
So I thank them. They did it. They've done it every year, and they've done it again this year. Now, because you have kept us informed, of course, we would ask
more questions.
Yes, you take that in good faith, and we would want to assess the realism of the things that we are hearing. So, my first premise is to, acknowledge the fact that this is not the easiest of times for anything you are trying to do. That is true for the world economy. I am not sure there's any country that is finding things easy at the moment. The world itself is in the eye of the storm, inflicted by the ripples effect of the Russia-Ukraine war. Nigeria is not exempted. And if you need evidence of how hot the seat is now for Nigeria, just go and read the reports released by the likes of S&P, Moody's, or Fitch. All of them have had copious things to say about Nigeria. All of them more or less saying the same thing about our external financing conditions, about our budgetary, difficulties, and about our debt problems, and particularly debt costs. So, and the states are in no better position, and companies are not in any better position as well. So it's not, it happens that only 2 countries are counting body bags. All other countries are involved by proxy. We are not counting body bags. But we're counting something else, whether job losses, gross reversal, devaluation, etc. So I needed that context, for us to say it's not a year. It's a year that you are hoping that damage will be controlled. So I now move to the budget announcements. The way it hits me is that in spite of the problems that I have just acknowledged, the budget looks to me to be rather optimistic. Let me put it like that. to expect revenue, last year, 2022, revenue increased by 1 trillion from 6 trillion in 2021 to 7 trillion in 2022. 7 trillion is the peak revenue performance of this administration in 8 years, as a matter of Nigeria's peak revenue in history in Naira terms. Not to mention the fact that if you correct that 7 trillion for devaluation, it's probably less, much less than the 4 trillion, 5 trillion that we were doing. So to tell me that revenue is going to go from 7 trillion to 10.5 trillion before the end of this year, looks to me, that's something that,
Gotcha.
I mean, is this realistic?
Right.
The second is the biggest component of spending is not personnel cost, is interest payment.
Debt servicing.
Yes,
Okay.
debt service. So last year, of the 7 trillion revenue, we paid 6 trillion on interest payment. And so of the 14 trillion that we spent overall, 6 trillion out of it went on debt. Only 8 trillion was left for any other type of spending, which is recurrent capital. And so we borrowed 7 trillion and added it to the 1 trillion left in revenue after we paid debt. So the suggestion, the budget for this year for debt cost, only marked that 6 trillion up by 0.39 trillion. So we paid 6 trillion last year. I'm reading in this budget that we budgeted to pay 6.39 trillion. And I said, how can that be? Even if the overall budget stood at 44 trillion, that it was at the end of September, global interest rates this year, domestic interest rates this year will be much higher than last year. So you should expect that even on 44 trillion, you will pay more than 6 trillion in interest. But we are told 10 trillion is going to be issued to finance this year's deficit. Another 22 trillion is going to be issued by securitizing of ways and means. So we are told the debt will move from 44 trillion to 77 trillion by May.
Right.
Now, so that's a 75% increase in the budget stock. So if you paid 6 trillion or 44 trillion, minimum is to mark up that 6 trillion by 75% of 6 trillion. So you are paying, that's 4.5. So you are paying 10.5 on interest payment. And that takes all the 10.5 you are expecting on revenue. I have my doubts that we can raise revenue of 10.5. I'll be more likely to say we could do 8 trillion. But now, debt cost looks clearly likely to be more than that 8 trillion. Likely to take away the entire revenue. So whatever money we'll be spending next year, all must be borrowed. Okay, they don't all have to be borrowed. The point is, having deficit is one thing. How you finance the deficit is another. It's not just by borrowing that you can finance deficit. From the figures you had, if you go to the the first item there could have been bigger. It's a question, we can debate how do we make it bigger. And the last item there,
privatization,
could be bigger. I really don't like to call it privatization. I would prefer to call it financialization.
Okay.
I'll be the first to disclose that this smallest piece of it is something that I have been involved in for about 6 years now.
Right.
I am the vice chair of the technical committee of the National Council on Privatization. So I'll be the first to tell you that this malperformance is not for lack of trying. Okay? passes were completed, shots were taken.
Yeah. And then something happens.
As Ben will tell you, not all the shots that are taken, gets to be on target.
Yeah.
I'm not here to make an excuse.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I appreciate how difficult it could be.
Yeah.
We are here talking to Ben. We are here engaging with Ben.
Yeah.
The situation that I and the technical committee are,
or
even the situation that the National Council of Presidential is in, is different. Because the makers of the budget is not us. It's the 470 elected people. 360 in the House, 109 in the Senate, and 1 in the presidency.
Executive.
Which is a joint ticket. The president has 470. So whatever dribbling, midfield dribbling you did, whatever shots you took, if you can't get the ball into the net at that level,
you're not going anywhere.
You're back to square zero. So, but my point is that instead of proposing that we borrow as heavily as we're saying, if this was a company, they will be proposing to raise equity
rather than debt.
So we already owe 44 billion in debt. Our equity position, I am not sure this administration has issued any equity in 8 months, in 8 years. So why not consider equity? And all other countries that are strong, that still have control of their budget, if they project revenue, it happens. If they say they are going to spend, they spend. All of them, without exception, are relying more on equity.
Dr. Teriba, we have to leave it there. We have to leave it there.
I hope
a solution.
This administration in the 5 months left could explore equity issues so that we don't take debt to 77 trillion. And if they don't, that the incoming government be encouraged by to do more like this.
Dr. Ayo Teriba, economist, CEO, Economic Associates, and Mr. Adewale Ajayi, partner, head of tax at KPMG. Thank you so much for a very in-depth conversation. I wish we had more time, but now.